I just mentioned that this concept of refuah versus hana, we had been asked last time, is this statement over here from Rav, I'll read the whole thing. It says, Amar Rav Acha Bar Avia, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hiniach Kelev Shor Niskol, Al Gavi Makaso, and then he should not be lashed for doing so. And Mr. Saknovitz correctly pointed out that that's against, let's say, the Pesach of the Rambam. The Rambam seems to give a heter for such a thing. And I said, yeah.
Can I interrupt for a
minute?
Yeah. What I said was true, however.
Yeah.
We should not be concentrating on the result. The question here is, if I do an achilah that's not the normal way of eating, the matter of which is not the normal matter, I don't get malchus for it. It's not defined as achilah, right? Then there's an Ika Da'amri that says, not only, we're not talking about achilah, we're talking about hana.
Well,
if I don't do the Isser in the normal way of hana, then I also don't get malchus. The whole sugya is talking about malchus. And we should concentrate on the question of malchus. And not on the results of whether it's mutter or asr.
Well, or the permissibility thereof.
Right, permissibility.
Well, I don't know. I like to make sure that I know the halacha that comes out of this. Otherwise, it's going to be like, we're just going to have our heads like sponges, but not actually know what we're talking about.
Well,
yeah.
Let's take an example.
Yes.
There are three components to achilah. When do I get lashes for eating a ham sandwich? Number one, I have to eat a kazayas, right?
Well, you're talking about shiurim, yeah, okay.
No, if I eat kazayas, I don't get malchus.
Yes, okay, fine. Sure, yeah.
Right. Number two, it has to be eaten achilas pras within a certain amount of time. If I have a chatzi shiur, a chatzi yogurt sandwich in the morning and one in the afternoon, I don't get malchus.
Correct. You have to correct the next time.
In the normal manner of eating.
Well, then, if you're going to give me all those technicals, you also have to have witnesses and the proper warning also, right? That's the technical thing about, the shiur and the zman, right?
That's not the definition of achilah.
Okay.
The definition of achilah has three components. If I don't do any of those either of those three components, I don't get malchus.
Well, there's more components then. If you're going to define that, then it also has to be edible. Okay. If it's not roy lachila, yeah, then there's the hana aspect. If for some reason this is inedible ham or shouldn't be edible, at least for those who eat ham, or somehow I managed to eat it in that where there was no the usual benefits of eating. For example, if I coated it with some sort of gel and I swallowed it as a pill, or achila gasa, some or forced it down, also that there would be no chiyuv, right? So that's be done derech hana. That's what this sugya is describing.
Okay, that's the other derech hana, correct.
Okay. The kiliak, the orla thing over here. Abaye says kilei hakerem. Kilei hakerem is what? Kilei hakerem is someone who allowed grains to grow adjacent to his vine. So that creates all sorts of isser, creates forbidden grain and creates forbidden grapes. And that's not only is an isser achila, it's an isser hana. And the chiddush of Abaye over here is that the kilei hakerem in this case are forbidden even if a person doesn't get the usual benefit from it. Okay, so or as the halacha says, even if he doesn't get the usual benefit. So, what would be an nafkamina? If a person were to take forbidden grape juice, right? Forbidden grape juice, stam yenom, forbidden, derabanan. Oh, takes yain nesech, iser doraisa. Yain nesech, they use this bottle of wine, they pour some out in front of the idol as a libation. If the yain nesech were to be denatured, such that is no longer appetizing, and then I would drink it, so that's not their hana, so I wouldn't be punished with lashes for drinking the yain nesech. But if I were to take kilei hakerem wine and denature it, such that now it's not really fit for drinking, but I would drink it, that's not der hana, I would still be lashed according to this according to this teaching from Abaye. I should put the Gemara on the screen so I can see it also. Okay. Well, yeah. So he's going to give drushes for this, which, with your permission, maybe we would skip over a little bit of it. But why? So that we could get to the juicy stuff. Okay. There's
that's the basis of what was the definitions here.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to stick to the definitions. There's a little bit just so we could go get to other definitions that I wouldn't say more important, but more relevant for us. We want to get to the Bakol Misrapin. This is our last day. Okay? So that's what Abaye says here. And Isi ben Yehuda has a challenge. What was the basis for what Abaye said, by the way? Mishum delo kisiv behu achila. What does it say, Kila Karam? What is the nature of the prohibition? What does it say? Pen tikdash, lest it become sanctified. Now, the biblical lexicon was a little bit, I guess, poorer than the Mishnaic one. Okay, they didn't have words like usr and mutter in the way that, let's say, Chazal use it in the Torah. Usually, usr literally means tied up. Okay, and mutar means untied. But we're talking about permitted and allowed, and permitted and prohibited. So too with the word chayav. Chayav and pater are not terms that we have in the Torah or in the Bible. Instead, they're in the Mishnah, right? They're Mishnaic terms. So in this case, it is prohibited means tikdash. Usually that which is kodesh, you're not allowed to mess with. And it's used a few times in the Torah where tikdash means something has become prohibited. Not that it's holy, but prohibited. That's what it means here. So because it's a more general term, or whatever it might be, is there a Rashi here? No, he doesn't say. Okay. He does say, though, we do learn from this that the Kilei Kerem is essentially different, and he's going to link it to other prohibitions. What is the other prohibition that's going to come up here? Basar b'chalav, okay? Milk and meat. If milk and meat falls into the same category as Kilei Kerem, then even if the cheeseburger, okay, properly cooked cheeseburger, is appetizing for those who are allowed to eat milk and meat together, and if I were somehow to ruin it in a way that it's no longer fit to be eaten, but I would still eat that cheeseburger, still get lashes, because it doesn't matter. The derech hana'ah standard for liability is not allowed here. What does the Gemara say?
Why is the hana'ah? Because it's all based on achila.
Yeah.
And since it doesn't. The term achila was not mentioned. We're
about to read that. That's the next few lines of the Gemara. What does it say? Isi ben Yehuda Omer. Minay levas b'chalav shehu aser. By the way, he's introducing this. This is just leading up to his actual question. Okay, but he's using before he formulates the kushya on Abaye, he's going to give some assumptions that the halacha shares. Okay, which is. How you know basar b'chalav shehu aser? Shneimar kan ki am kadosh atah.
Aser and what?
Yeah, aser to eat apparently.
What did the Torah say?
Well, so what does the Torah say? The Torah initially says lo vashel gedi b'chalevimo. It doesn't say not to eat it. So he's going to say that there's a pasuk which says that you are holy people, and then don't see the kid in its mother's milk. So you don't know. It says, well, I shouldn't cook. The usual joke based on a Gemara. They ask Moses, do I have to have separate forks and knives, separate cutlery for eating milk and meat? He says, don't see the kid in its mother's milk. Just don't cook them together. But it says don't cook them 3 times. So it must be implying something. Here, the drasha says, well, the beginning of the pasuk invokes, you are a holy people to the Lord your God, right? Don't eat nevelas, okay? Be holy. No, I think that means nevela. Well, treifa basodeh. So treifa basodeh means that they but either way, not properly slaughtered food that died in a way that wasn't, perhaps it got attacked by an animal, it's diseased, whatever it might be. So you shouldn't eat that. Ma'alahalan asur for eating, afkan asur for eating. When it says introduces the non-kosher meat, so it says you should be holy. So too, when basar b'chalav is introduced with this aspect being holy, it must be an isur achila. Okay, now it told me about achila. And how do I know that I cannot even get benefit from combination of milk and meat? Amarta kal v'chomer. Let's see if this kal v'chomer sticks. Orla is prohibited in Hana, but Orla never did an avera with it. right? I planted a tree. Isn't that a good thing? They actually had a whole ceremony on Tu B'Shvat, a tree planting, and then they told the first 3 years of fruit, I can't eat them. What Avera was done here? We're just waiting, right? But Orla has an Isser Hana, and no Avera was performed. Okay, Bas B'Chalav Shenevda Ba Avera Enodin Shehu Aser Bahana. So if Bas B'Chalav, I actually did an Avera in producing this combination by slapping the hot cheese on the hamburger, I should definitely have an Isser Hana on my hands. Now, this is a little bit too much of an argument. Why? What's the issue? It's basically saying, in essence, that any product of a forbidden act should be an Isser Hana. If an act was prohibited and a person went and did it anyways, the result, aside from the Isser Achila, should be an Isser Hana. But is that true throughout the Torah? Yeah. So this is a little bit of a pilpul and less of a rock solid argument for creating Isuri Hana. Okay. Although a lot of times when a person does, let's say, something avodah zarah, it does create Isuri Hana, but that's besides the point. It's not saying it's clear across the board. We'll respond. You have a question there? I heard something. Okay. Marla orla shekain lohoithala shafa kosher. Tamar b'vasar chalav shaithala shafa kosher. Difference between orla and basar chalav. Basar chalav, you took that which was once permitted. The meat was permitted, the milk was permitted. Combining them created an isser. Orla never had a time yet. The seed didn't count. It wasn't. That wasn't saying you were eating. It's talking about from when it's planted. That starts the clock, and now everything's always usser. Okay. Tumar b'basar chalav shaithala shafa kosher. Would you say basar chalav? So the next line introduces chametz pesach yochiach she'elu shafa kosher basar bano. Well, we do have things that do have a precedent for, let's say, what's wrong with basar chalav. The chametz on Pesach is asur bano today on Passover, but yesterday on Erev Pesach it wasn't. So there is such a precedent for things like this. Okay. But then they could challenge that. Malachamitz b'Pesach she'kein anush kareth tomar b'vasar chalav she'ino anush kareth. Well, the Pesach precedent is a little bit too strong. Why? Because Pesach, at least the chametz they're on, is asur ba'ana, but the basar chalav is not is not anush kares. You get kares for eating chametz on Pesach, but for the basar chalav, it's just a simple isur malchus, but no kares. A lot of isuri kares do carry malchus, but that saves you from the kares. If pork or milk and meat, you'll get lashed, but you're not having an account of kares going on there. Wow. So keeping track of these. He said sometimes it's just like the result of this is, well, that's what the halacha is anyways. So kile karen yochichu she'ein anush karet v'asur ba'ana. Well, kile karen is if one were to eat it, there's no isur kares, but there's still asur ba'ana. I think that what you see here is actually three different categories we have here. Each one, some have isuri kares, some have isuri hana, and some have this aspect that they were prohibited all the time, and others are no, they were just prohibited now when the combination happens. So you can't really learn anything from anything necessarily.
So
by the way, well,
where do we stand? We don't have a proof that
we don't have proof anyways, but this isn't the reason why Isi ben we haven't got to that. The next thing Isi ben Yehuda will say, I just have to get the names right because I get the names confused. Yeah, Isi ben Yehuda now is a kasha on Abaye. Here comes the line that's the kasha. Ready? V'im Isa, if Abaye is correct, what did Abaye say? Abaye said that Kilei Akarem, if I'm not mistaken, here, Humon Kilei Akarem Shalokin Alam, Afilu Shalot Sheder Hanasan. That's the mile of Kilei Akarem. If a person were to somehow drink the Kilei Akarem inedible wine, he'd still be hit with an account of lashes because you don't have the standard of Hana. Let's imagine if a Jew could be punished for an Avera without the standard of Edom and Hasra. Is there such a din? Normally, Jew has to be punished. We have to prove that he wasn't a shogeg by bringing in Edom and Hasra. There's only one case where we don't have Edom and Hasra. That's the Mesis, right? So here he says, V'nisa, if Abai were to be correct, Nifroch, Malakia Karen, Shekain Lokin Alehem, Afilu Shalod Der Hana Asan. Where did they invoke Kilei Karen here? Where it said, Kilei Karen Yochichu, Shein Anush Kares, Vasar Ba'na. Kilei Karen is a bigger precedent because what? Person doesn't get kares for eating them, but they're still what? Forbidden ba'ana. That's what the line of Gemara said. If Abaye were correct this drasha should have said malakili akarem, right? Shekain lokin alena afil lok sheder chana ason. That's what it should have said, if Abaye were correct. Okay, so it's a good caution on Abaye. If we're invoking the unique aspect of each of these prohibitions, this is a more unique aspect. Okay, so he says Abaye Tomar b'may Tomar. If you go actually 2 lines back, actually 3 lines back. The second line of the Gemara we said Tomar. Okay, Tomar b'bas v'chalav shayis l'shas kosher. Okay, would you say that regarding bas v'chalav that actually had its time when it was permitted? Okay. Bas v'chalav became prohibited. Orla was prohibited all along, so it's a more chamor, I guess, category. So Rashi Abaye says, "She'ein lokin alav ela der hanato atu b'bas v'chalav achila kasiva bay." Okay, you could have said about bas v'chalav also, right? That what it has also this aspect that one is not lashed. Sorry, one will be lashed, even if he ingests the bas v'chalav in a way that he didn't get pleasure. Okay, it should have said that. It should have said what Rabbi is saying, but it didn't say that. Okay, which is the implication now here is that bas b'chalav doesn't have a chila written regarding it, but for some reason, even if it's not derech hana, he is to be punished for eating it. Okay, so I'd like to take a step back over here. Okay, and say that the rules that we see here that came out are implying that bas b'chalav and kila karim do have this unique aspect. Okay, what is that unique aspect? There's not necessarily achila, yeah, even for achila, but because achila isn't the defined prohibition in the Torah, okay, then we learn that a normal achila is not the standard for punishment, but instead any way of ingesting this thing, even shelo keder hana, correct? That's where the halacha goes. And I also wrote that nothing can be extrapolated regarding bas b'chalav. Okay, you can't really learn anything like this according to Abaye. Abaye says that this whole drasha back and forth, right? He doesn't hold of it. Okay, he says it's not. It's like I said, it's too much of a pill pull. It doesn't follow the opinion that Abaye is following. Yeah. Okay. Let me try to formulate this way. They challenged Abaye with this back and forth. I don't know what the correct term for this is. It's drushas, but it's what do you malid zeh in tomar bezeh, right? There's a few drushas here. You could learn something from another, kal v'chomer, an attempted kal v'chomer. But the kal v'chomer keeps being broken up because we see that which is chomer is actually more kal in a different aspect. But Abaye, okay, Isi ben Yehuda said, Abaye, if you're correct, it should have said something differently. And Abaye says, well, according to you, or at least according to the way I have it, it should have already a few lines back said something else. Correct? Abaye doesn't agree with the limud over here. He says, Isi ben Yehuda says, what you're saying should have fit into here, into this line. That Kilei Kerem is more chamor. Why? Because a person would get lashes for eating them even without their hanasan. If Abaye were to be correct, Abaye says I am correct. Okay, but this whole argumentation that you brought me is itself not accepted. Okay, I don't accept the premise.
What's the end result?
The end result is that Abaye is dismissing this argumentation. Okay?
And what's his conclusion?
His conclusion is Kilei Kerem. A person would be forbidden for consuming, would be prohibited from consuming Kilei Kerem, even in a case where it's not hana, and he'd be punished for doing so. So too with milk and meat.
Same thing with milk.
Yeah, so too with milk and meat.
And the reason is because there is no achila mentioned in the Torah.
Yeah.
So what we have here is you have an original statement that any isur of achila, if you don't do it the normal way of derech hana, you don't get malchus. There are 2 exceptions to that rule. One is kilei akera, and one is basar b'chol. Why are they exceptions? Because there is no achila mentioned in the Torah about those 2 things.
Or more than that, there's actual there's different words that imply something beyond that.
Imply an Isser,
Yeah,
but don't have the word Achila.
yeah,
Hana'ah, as the part we skipped,
yeah.
Hana'ah is connected to Achila.
Yes, even though we're not talking about two Yisurei Hana necessarily. We're not talking about Yisurei Hana necessarily. This idea that Kili Akarem, by the way, this idea that Kili Akarem and Bas B'chal, which are Yisurei Hana, but a person would be punished for consuming them even without the Hana'ah, is a standard that's not connected to this concept of Isur Hana. Yeah, yes, they are two different things. Trying to say that you could imagine an Isur Hana with if a person were to consume it without Hana, so he would not be punished. And Stam and Isra Chilu without an Isra Hana, but somehow it has the standard that if he were to consume it in a way that doesn't allow Hana, he'd still be punished. Okay, you can imagine such a thing, like they say pork. There's no Isra Hana, but somehow if a person were to ingest pork without Hana, then he would be punished because of a drasha that we have in the pasuk or some other textual clue or halacha l'moshe Sinai, something like that. These two standards, these two ideas use the word Hana, so that's where the confusion comes in. Okay, and Isra Hana means you can't get benefit at all from this prohibition. You can't sell it, for example, right? It's not talking about the way you consume the food. The way you consume the food, and there's a derech Hana, is not connected to the general concept of Isur Hana. Yeah, very, very interesting idea. So here's, with your permission, okay, I'd like to introduce the idea of a kol misrapim, because everything from here is not halachic after this point, okay, where they challenge, why didn't you learn it my way? I'm going to learn it your way. And that's bakol misrapim, because you invoke this. This was our homework. I recall getting a homework assignment to explain what the Rambam's talking about. What is this whole idea of misrapim? So that's what we're going to see now, so that we can get some halachic clarity.
Where is
It's just a few lines down. It's Amar Rabbi Yaakov. Okay, it's what's it across? In my thing, there's a Tosfos here. It says Ikarin Namarin. So go into the Gemara and go 2 lines up. Amar Rabbi Yaakov. Okay, because there's what to say here. Yeah, it's still on the same page. Okay, I'm going to highlight it here so that gentlemen at home can see it. Okay.
Again, opposite of which Tosfos?
Well, the Tosfos says Ikarin Ne'amarin, and then Ne'asarin. Sorry, Samichs and Mems. Okay. You see, it's the third to last Tosfos on the page, and then you go into the Gemara, and it says Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ba'kol mithrapiin chutz me'atzei asherah. Okay. Now, lehith rapoth or lehith rapeh. In this case, it should be rapeh, but whatever, it's almost interchangeable, means we can use for medical reasons. In the olden days, there was a very thin line between what we call medical reasons, therapeutic reasons, and just preventative. They're all considered refuah. Okay? So a person could use use everything for refuah purposes, which is what the Rambam was saying. The Rambam says, if you have something that's not hanoadik, then that means you don't get a benefit. There's no taste to it, for example. So you could use it for refuah, except if it's idolatrous. So here's what it says here. Chutz me'atzei asherah. Except for the wood, okay, the branches that came from an asherah tree. Asherah tree, actually is a machlokas rishonim how to correctly define an asherah tree, right? But the point is, it is used for idolatrous purposes. And that prohibits the whole thing. Hey chidami. So the Gemara asks, what are we talking about? I nema deika sakana. If this person who's using that asherah wood for whatever reason to cure himself is in a state of danger, afilu atzei asherah nami. So it's like any other prohibition. I could eat pig and I could be mechal Shabbos. Do what I need to do for a chole who is in danger? Correct? That should be v'i deleka sakana. And if there is no danger here, afilu kol yisurin shebatorah nami lo. Shouldn't be able to eat pig just because I don't feel good today. Okay, chole shein bo sakana, or you can't just violate Shabbos because a person's a little bit sick. There's no danger.
So,
yeah. What?
in the breaks of a sakana, right? You can endanger yourself, or you
Can't endanger yourself
express any avera except for the big 3.
in case of sakana. Well, we haven't gotten to that. You know that because you read the Gemara alone. We're asking the Havaminas. These are the Havaminas.
So
Okay?
it's not assuming that.
Yeah.
You assume that even in
The case of, in a sakana you can't use an ashera. Okay, so it's very easy when we know the answers. Besides, I have the teacher's edition of the Gemara over here. Okay? Yeah. Well, actually, you have a better teacher's edition. I just have something which has a little bit of Steinsaltz. Art Scroll has a lot more, which makes it and this is what I had in the base medrash, and it also happens to have an Eruvin with it, so it's more convenient for me to schlep. But okay, never mind. Rabbi Bronchfield, no problem with Art Scroll. He even asked me to acquire some Art Scrolls for him back in the day. Okay, so you say olam deika sakana. We're talking about a case of a chole. He's got real sakana here. Va'afilu hachi atzeh ashira lo. Okay, in a case of sakana, one cannot avail himself the use of somehow the ashera wood to help. Why? Well, what's wrong with that? The Tanya's, it says in the Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, im nomar b'chol nafshecha. No, nemar, sorry. The pasuk says, you should love the Lord thy God, b'chol levavecha, chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha, right? It says, b'chol nafshecha. Lama nemar, b'chol meodecha. They already told me with all your soul means your very life. So what it says in everything you got. Okay? And if it says, v'im nemar, b'chol meodecha, everything you got, that's what it said. Lama nemar, b'chol nafshecha. Should be nafshecha if it's the end of the sentence. Okay? So why does it say with all your soul? It means your very life. It's a good question. Elamar lecha, im yesh adam shegufo chaviv alav mimemono. If you have a normal person, I'd add that word, normal before the word adam. His body means his life, his physical well-being is dearer to him than his property. Kach nemar b'chol nafshecha. That's why it says with all your soul. Torah says love God with all your soul, but God still takes precedent. Your love of God has to be the highest priority. Sometimes you have Jack Benny, and his money or his property is more dear to him than his very life. What's the invocation there, Jack Benny? You guys know that joke. Yaakov, you know the joke? I did? I did? Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. He says, the mugger points a gun in his face and says, your money or your life. And he hesitates. The mugger says, do? So, well, I'm thinking, Okay, that's a joke. So there are Meshuganas like that, okay, Scrooges, who their money is dearer to them or their property. So the Torah is addressing them. If you're one of those not so healthy people or you're a normal person, you still have to put God as your priority over your money and over your life. When do you have to put God as your priority? It means that sometimes you can't do certain averas. Okay? Even when you're in danger, you cannot do certain averas. By the way, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that's talking about Jews. Jews are commanded to sanctify God's name. Choosing God over danger, okay, or endangering oneself or letting oneself die and not do the avera is something that Jews are commanded to do in certain circumstances. Gentiles have no such thing. So if the Gentile is forced to commit murder or worship the idols or engage in the forbidden relations, then the Gentile is supposed to do so. Okay? You should have no qualms about it. Let's see here. Kiyasa Ravin Amar Rabbi Yochanan Bakomith Rapin Chutz Me'avodah Zara V'Gilui Rayos U'Shfichus Damim. So we could use, and this is what you said, the Rambam says, you can use anything for refuah. And by the way, bisrapin, the way they have it, once again, the more general term, even for therapeutic purposes. Therapeutic is not tainug. Ta'anug is hana. You're doing, let's say, oil. I find the oil on the shelf. Remember we said yesterday, rub olive oil on the skin. Okay, that might be a ta'anug. It actually feels good to do it. It has benefits. But if you're using castor oil or something that maybe is not most pleasant, you're probably doing it for refuah, which means preventive, therapeutic, or medicinal. So you can't do it. Shfichus damim, that's the top line here. Shfichus damim means murder. How do they know? Avodah zarah hadam aran. We just said that drasha from Shema. Put God first. Okay? God first. What?
By the Ashira tree.
Yeah.
What act is actually committing avodah zarah? I'm just using it.
He's using the wood. No. So the Asherah was like an idol, basically. And now he can't use that wood for whatever he needs.
Bow down to this tree.
Yeah, it was an idol.
It's now avodah zarah.
Yeah.
So he's asking, go up.
Right.
Yeah, well, it becomes prohibited. Yeah.
By using it, I'm not performing an avodah zarah act.
It doesn't matter. If there were an idol of Baal over here, you can't get any benefit from that idol anyway. You're not worshiping it. The last Baal worshiper died 3,000 years ago. It does not matter. It's prohibited forever. Yeah.
If it saved a life.
Even if it saves a life, sorry. If you want that Baal, if you want to use that Baal statue for your purposes, let's say it has precious metal to it or something. It's made out of a mineral that could save lives. So you need to go find a Joe Gentile. And even though this is against the Medrash says David HaMelech found a lot of precious metals in idols that he took from conquered peoples. They dedicated to the temple. How could he do that? Anything that a Jew acquires that's an idol becomes prohibited. The Jew cannot nullify the idol. So it says that he had Itai Agiti with him. Itai Agiti was a Gentile fellow, a mercenary of his. And Itai Agiti was able to nullify all the idols before David acquired them, and then he could use them for his purposes and melt them down. The problem is, the Gemara, when it talks about Halacha L'maisa, says that the Gentile who's doing the nullification has to be what? An idol worshiper himself. If he's a good Gentile, the kind, let's say a Ben Noach or a Ger Toshav, who himself does not worship idols, and we know that he's not an idol worshiper, he can't nullify it for us either way. So it's kind of funny. Wait a minute, you're telling me Itai Agiti was a Russia? He was a real certified idol-worshipping Gentile that David had as one of his close confidants? That doesn't make so much sense. It says David was a fugitive. He lost the throne to his son and had to run for his life with a few supporters. And who was his main supporter? Itai Agiti. Okay? Yeah.
Isn't there a Gemara, a mission about Rabbi Gamliel, who used to bathe in a place of Makom of Ozor?
Yeah, it means it's in the Mishnah, and it's the Aphrodite bathhouse in Rome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't that...
So, and he answered that, look,
Bittul?
no, it's not even Bittul. He says, if they were to build, let's say, a temple to Aphrodite, and so they're worshiping Aphrodite there, the statue of Aphrodite. But here, this is a bathhouse. And right there's a shower room and the washroom, and that's a toilet. Okay? She's a fancy toilet. They decorated their toilet facilities with Aphrodite. Okay? This is not an Aphrodite for worship. This is the Aphrodite to make the toilet look nicer. So that never was an avodah zarah. It's a bizayon. So, like he says, she's serving me. I'm not serving her. Okay? So that's mutter. Lamad Dover, it's similar to anything else. You can't go to, like, they build churches all over the place and they put, big pictures of, their Mashiach and everything. That's avodah zarah. If they were to put a nice picture of him in the lavatory because they want to make it look nice, so that's not avodah zarah, that's a bizayon. Okay? They're not worshiping that particular image. Yeah. So, that shouldn't be a problem. If I'm not mistaken. So, what?
Just to get back to it, so therefore, it's a festival of avodah zarah,
Yeah.
and one cannot get any hana.
Yeah, and not only that, not can't hana, he can't use it even for refuah in a case of sakana. Yeah, really, really hard. So let's continue. What about Gilir Rayos, Shvichus Damim? How do you know you can't save your life with those? The Sanya, Rabbi Omer, Ki Kasher Yakum Ish Al Rehu Urtzachon Nefesh, Ken Hadavar Hazeh. It says concerning the rapist and saving the betrothed maiden from the rapist, the Torah compares it to a case of murder. Okay? One man comes upon his fellow and murders him. That is what this case is like. Okay? They should have saved this woman also. What's the similarity with between the murderer and this engaged young woman? Hareze bala made. This came to teach us something, and you find that you learn Makish Rotseach Lenara Hamorasa. Okay, there's a connection between the murderer, case of a murder, and this Nara Maorasa. It's funny, one case they mentioned the Rotseach, that's the perpetrator, and the other case they mentioned the victim, that's the Nara Maorasa. Ma Nara Hamorasa Nitan Latzila Binafsho. If necessary, you could save this woman Binafsho by taking the life of her attacker. Okay? It's permitted. I can't stop certain crimes from happening. If I see someone picking your pocket, he's not using force, or someone burglarizing your house and you're not home, okay? No one's home. He knows there's no one home. That's why he's going there. He's not expecting to make it a case. If he was burglarizing a home that's occupied, that's like a ritzicha, okay? But in certain cases, you see a crime happening, you cannot use lethal force to stop the crime from happening. There's no prohibition necessarily because there's no lethal force on the other side or potential. But it says here that with regards to this rapist, though a bystander is authorized to use lethal force to stop it. Okay? In certain circumstances. Afrotzeach nitan lahatzilo benafsho. Okay? So too, you can save the victim from the potential murderer by what? By killing the intended killer. Okay? Yeah, it's a road, classic case of rodef. V'na'ara morasa me'rotzeach. What do we learn about the na'ara morasa, this betrothed maiden, from the case of the murderer? Ma rotzeach yiharag vel yavor, af na'ara hamorasa tehareg ve'al tavor. They both have this aspect, you learn one from the other, that if a Jew were to be compelled to either commit murder or himself be killed, then he should elect to be killed, l'chachila. So too, if a Jew is being told, engage in relations with this betrothed woman, okay, or face death, so he's supposed to choose death. Okay? That's Yeharag Val Yavor. Yeharag Val Yavor means l'chachila, a person is supposed to choose death and not the sin. By the way, the Rambam points out, let's say a person chose to do the sin. A Jew did not withstand the test. He bowed to the idol, he did the deed, or he murdered, right? Because they compelled him to. That Jew is off the hook. There's no punishment for doing so. That's why all those people were forcibly converted in Spain since the times of the Shulchan Aruch. What do they call those? What's the Hebrew word for Marrano? Marrano is not a nice word in Spanish. What was the proper halachic term for the Marranos? Anusim. Anus Rahmana Patri. They were forced into it. Yes, they did not withstand the test. I don't know if any of us would withstand these types of tests. Our heroes withstand these tests, and we build synagogues in their memory, and we say great things about them. But some people don't pass the test when the time comes. Yeah. Yeah. Give their lives. Can you just kill yourself? And what if you preempt the goyim? Yeah, that's a new idea. Okay. What's that? No, it's not my phone. It sounds like the house phone. Okay. Didn't know someone lives here. Okay. Next. Shvichus damim gufei minalan. Wait a minute. But how do you know this regarding shvichus damim? This Yeharag Vel Yavor. Sorry, not the Yeharag Vel Yavor, but the save the life first. Okay. That use of lethal force. Okay. Why? There are some leftists who have this crazy idea. If he's going to kill you, what would help if you kill him? They'll just make you as bad, right? Crazy idea, right? But there's some the idea that you could use lethal force to stop a murder from happening. Okay, to many doesn't sound right. Yeah. How do you know this is the standard? Yeah. How do you know? And how do you know there's not allowed, even if compelled to, or the idea that what do you have here? That one can kill in order to save. Okay? Well. Okay. So one can kill in order to save. Okay?
One can kill in order to save.
Yeah. And this to save either oneself or an innocent victim. Okay?
Self-defense wise.
It's or defense of others also. They're similar. The rodef, when you have a rodef, right? You have a rodef, it doesn't matter who the nirdaf is. As a matter of fact, Chazal wanted to encourage bystanders to help the nirdaf. If I were to, remember we mentioned this like a year ago, if I'm being pursued by someone and I use the priceless Ming vase to bash over the head of my attacker, so I've just caused a monetary loss to the owner of that vase. I saved my life. So now I'll have to make restitution to the owner. However, if you were the intended victim, and I took the vase and I smashed it over the killer's head, and I saved your life, I do not have to make any restitution to the owner of the vase. Okay, so that's the example that it's even more encouraged to save the life of others. Let's read what the Gemara says. You'll see what the lesson comes out here. Okay, Svarahu ki ha'u da'asa l'kamei de Rava. There was someone who came to Rava and he had a question. Are we allowed to go over time? Can I do that? I really want to do so. Okay. Okay. He came to Rava. He said, Amarle, Mare Durai, or Durai, Amarli, Zil Katle Lefanya. Okay. V'ilo katilna lach, v'ilo katilna lach. The Paritz has ordered me to kill my fellow. And he says, if I don't, then he'll kill me. Amarle liktuluch v'lo tiktol. So let yourself be killed and do not kill. Okay. By the way, killing without justification is murder. My chaz is the dama didach sumak tfei dilma dama de hahu gavra sumak tfei. Why do you think you're going to put? It's more important that he die than you die. This is the Hargavili Avor aspect. What does it matter? You think your blood is redder than his? I don't know. If someone were to prove that his blood is redder, would he take precedent? It means no one's blood is any different. It's an expression that even entered other languages. No person takes precedent over another person. So you cannot kill in order to live. Okay, you cannot kill in order to live, and that's why we have this Yehar Vel Yavor. Better that you let yourself be killed and not say, well, if I kill him, I'll get to live. It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
In time of war, you're like, it's obvious.
Oh, in time of war, it's a mitzvah to kill. Yeah, we're not talking about war. We're talking about stam. In a time of war, you have to first. The most important aspect of war is that that's between nations. War is not between individuals, and you have to know who the enemy is. Okay, and, you have to know who your allies and enemies, and then it's a mitzvah to kill, which they've forgotten also. Apparently they don't encourage that. Well, okay.
It's only a question of self-defense.
Is it in war? It's just a question of self-defense? No, it's not necessarily. If you'd have milchemes rishus, let's assume milchemes rishus. Well, milchemes rishus ordained by the Sanhedrin, right? If the Sanhedrin, let's say we do all the halachas, the most makar thing. Milchemes rishus, that's not defense. Defense is milchemes mitzvah. Milchemes rishus, you kill the enemy also. Yeah.
Because you're in a war.
But you started the war. You attacked them. Milchemes rishus is the Jews doing the attacking. It's a war of aggression.
It's the reason we're attacking them. I mean, it's not.
No, okay, but it's if it were defense, you wouldn't need to have a milchemes rishus. Anytime they force the war on us, we have to defend ourselves. That's milchemes mitzvah. According to some milchemes chova, they have a third category, which is overlaps with mitzvah. Okay, milchemes rishus is the Jews are the aggressors. Now the current halachic mechanism does not allow for it.
To do that.
Yeah, what right? Yeah, that's a good question. But it's in Gemara. There is a concept of milchemes rishus, and the Sanhedrin has to authorize it, and then it happens for whatever reason. The Melech appeals for such a thing. He explains the reasons he might have.
And you're permitted to kill.
No, I'm not permitted. No, not murder. It's not murder. When the Jewish army does what it does according to halacha, it is not murder. There's no no one will be tried. There's no witnesses. There's no.
What is the basis of the Torah permitting that? A war of aggression for no purpose whatsoever. Maybe
that's not what the Rambam says. He says there is a reason. The king has reasons to expand, to teach people a lesson, or to increase his power and his fame, or to help Am Yisrael monetarily.
In that case, I'm permitted to kill somebody else.
Not you. In that case, when the king, authorizes the leader. The ideal king is a leader, but there have been. The Rambam allows for this, like the Navi or the Shofet. They're the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin has the right to do a lot of things. Okay, they're going to say the Sanhedrin they stand in the place of Moses, and they are the interpreters of the Torah.
And they can do immoral.
I won't call it immoral. That was a value judgment. So that you find immoral. Okay. So what you find immoral, the Chazal said that there's a completely justifiable. So they say that.
Give me an example of a completely justifiable.
Maseches Brachos, if I'm not mistaken, says David HaMelech appealed for help in making milchemes rishus for monetary reasons and also to intimidate potential enemies. Okay, so David HaMelech appeals to the Sanhedrin.
What you're saying is that because the Sanhedrin permits that.
Yeah.
It's totally permitted to go in and kill.
Yeah, then they get the enemy.
All the people.
Well, you're not the males
All the male people,
who are adults. Yes, all adult males. Yeah.
whether they're soldiers or not soldiers.
Yeah, because you have to. And any male of fighting age is considered a soldier because he could just pick up a gun. You kill his fellow, he'll just pick up his weapon. Okay? This is something that we're trying to point out in the halacha books. I'm surprised by how many rabbis forgot this thing. But in a normal war, unless you could prove you're dealing with Canaanites or actual Amalekites, Jews are supposed to kill the males. Yeah, so that's a good question. Are other nations allowed to make war?
All the males who are going to be soldiers, perhaps.
I don't know if we could.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
We're really, the halacha would have said that we shouldn't have allowed Hamas or any national group to take part of Eretz Yisrael and start building up a supply of weapons and threaten us on our borders. Any decent Sanhedrin or Jewish leader would have neutralized that threat long before anything could have happened. Yeah. So that's not
On the
halacha.
other side,
Yeah.
you're just saying that other nations have a right to do that, just as Jews have.
No, I didn't. I never said that. I said our Sanhedrin makes a determination. Our Sanhedrin has siyata d'shmaya, and they know what they're doing. They know the Torah. Can another nation choose to make war against another nation? Perhaps. This is something that really weak. This is now Rav Kook territory, where you have to say, were other nations allowed to make war ever? Were other nations allowed to attack Israel? If they had asked our Navi or our Sanhedrin, should we make war aggressively? You should know, by the way, most conquerors have never had any qualms about this. They never crossed their minds like, why are all these Romans deciding to do this? It was monetary reasons. Why did Genghis Khan do what he did?
Correct. But I'm hoping that you would agree that maybe there's some progress in terms of how you treat other people.
Yeah, maybe. I think this is a good thing. If the nations of the world would realize that a war of aggression is simply not something that should ever be done, and they have no right to do so, that'd be great. You know what the problem is? Let's say the Americans and the British decide no longer any wars of aggression, like they actually live up to the standards that they profess. War is illegal. Then, of course, you'll have the Rishayim step in and do it, realize it's a sign of weakness, and they'll do it anyways.
So
right?
I slightly different approach.
Okay.
You have a concept, when you have evil in the world, then there's a responsibility of morality to destroy evil.
Okay.
Evil is permitted to be destroyed, and therefore I can have a war of aggression against evil. I can't have war of aggression against normal citizens of the world. Stop, because I want something of theirs.
I like the way what you're saying. The problem is that's not what the Rambam says. It's actually against what the Rambam says.
Very well.
Yeah.
Quoting the Rambam.
Yeah. But the problem is the Rambam's quoting the Gemara, so it's a little bit hard.
So I have to understand that Gemara.
Yeah.
I mean, Satya Gaon said in terms of Torah.
Yes.
That any Perush of Torah that goes against logic we have to reinterpret what the Torah is.
Okay.
I'm not talking halacha.
Yeah.
Okay, halacha. I have a problem understanding halacha that's going to permit killing other people's children.
So here's something. I've been listening to a series of shiurim by Rav Sharkey. You know who he is. He's a little bit French, but he's very good on these things. He studies a lot of these issues. He says that Rav Kook was actually writing about this 100 years ago and more. The idea that improve morality and ideas like that. The issue is that it's not just any person saying, like, now I find this immoral. Chazal used to do this, and their ideas of war, we find them perhaps unethical or moral by our standards. Rav Kook does allow for the improvement of morality, and eventually maybe we'll realize, we shouldn't do this anymore. But the problem is, who's the one who gets to say that? Not just you and me. It's usually a person who's like a Navi can go and tell us, now we're not going to do this anymore. Take, for example, people find the idea of indentured servitude, what they call slavery, but really in the Torah it's different. In the Torah you can't just kidnap people and enslave them. That's forbidden, right? That's actually like ritzicha. Indentured servitude, when it's a monetary agreement that between two Jewish people or even two Gentile people, Jew and a Gentile, one is sold into indentured servitude to the other, a lot of people have a problem with that nowadays. Correct? So you could say that, okay, you don't have to do that. But to say that that's actually objectively wrong and we've come beyond that is a little bit of a stretch. We can't judge others back in the day. And to actually go and say, like, this is something that we know is wrong, you probably have to be a Sanhedrin or a Navi type to say this.
We're talking about indentured servitude.
Yeah.
What about slavery?
What about slavery? And enslaving people, stam, is actually a capital crime.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so we agree with slavery. What we're trying to say, even though the Torah speaks about avadim, they're not avadim.
It's in
modern terms of slavery.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
Different thing.
Yes.
So you can't include Torah here.
Well, my point is that if we're going to start making value judgment, realize that, hey, perhaps Jews engaging in, let's say, a war of aggression is conception of what's moral or not, doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what you and I say, because what we're thinking is we're not a Navi who's come to this conclusion. Rav Kook opened up the door for this, but Rav Kook also, was implying that it has to be the right people who are 100%, the right types of individuals who can make these determinations. Yeah. Kind of difficult, right?
Not clear to me.
Yeah.
When Russia decides to go into Ukraine because they want this territory.
Yeah.
And David Amelech goes into this country because he wants that territory.
Yeah. There's a difference. So
because he did
Shmuel Navi's question. So what does it say about Shmuel Navi? Shmuel Navi saw David, right? According to the Medrash. There's a Medrash that says Esav came out Admoni, right? And David was also called Admoni. And Shmuel Navi saw David, okay? All the other brothers are rejects. He sees the young one brought before him, and he physically resembles Esav. And Shmuel Navi has a conversation with God. Is this one a shofech damim like Esav was? And God says, no, look at his eyes. Esav just did what he wanted. Putin does what he wants. David HaMelech will do it, Birshus Sanhedrin. Okay? David HaMelech, yes, will shed a lot of blood, and it might even disqualify him from doing other mitzvahs. But he's doing it the right way, and with the Sanhedrin. When you have a Sanhedrin, you avoid groupthink. You have Siyat D'Shmai making that decision. Okay? David HaMelech, by the way, most of his wars were defensive. Okay? When he asked for Milchemes Rishus, he did it the right way. I would think that maybe you could declare that the only thing that would allow Putin to do what he did is if he would have asked the Sanhedrin, okay, or a Navi for permission to do so. He did neither, so he's an aggressor. But
I mean, the dozen or so Nevi'im that we have, what about all the Nevi'ei Sheker who also claim that
you have to have a real Navi. Yeah, you can't just go to any Navi. A Navi has to prove him. You can't,
I know what the Torah says.
Goyim have Nevi'im.
The reality in those days.
Well,
you had a lot of people who were Nevi'ei Sheker.
So they'd only ask the official Navi. Or Vitumim.
Schools. How many graduated? Out of the thousands of people who were B'nai who were
I don't know.
Who went to Navi school, most of them did graduate.
I'll give you an example from the Tanakh of what you're saying. Achav wanted a Milchemes Rishus. Achav proposed to Yehoshaphat, we have to do this. Perhaps he was in Milchemes Mitzvah because it was to regain territory of Eretz Yisrael, right? Lanu Ramos Gilad. So Yehoshaphat told him, let's consult with a Navi. So Achav said, oh good, I have 50 Nevi'im, not even Nevi'ei Baal, Nevi'ei Hashem. They're all Nevi'ei Sheker. So Yehoshaphat was able to determine that it's very convenient that Mr. 10 years ago was allowed his wife to murder all the Nevi'im, okay? And now they're back, and now suddenly he has 50 house Nevi'im who are all saying the same thing and telling him, go, happy war. Doesn't really make sense. So he's able to figure out that, don't recognize any of these people. They're all saying the same thing. It must be there's some sort of sheker going on here. Get me an actual Navi. And you know what he said? Achav said, oh, I know where to find you a real Navi. He's a guy I don't like because he always actually tells me what I don't want to hear. Navi's not a yes man. He's the guy who always says stuff that's contrary. Michayhu ben Yimla. So go bring him. He says, okay, he must be telling the truth. And what did the Navi tell them? God wants you to go to war so that Achav will die. But he's still going to go to war. It's implied, by the way, that they won that war, except Achav died. Right? Either way, yes, how do you know who's a Navi? A very difficult situation. That's why you should only trust a certified Navi. Okay, if you're going to go to war, they're not going to take Hananiah ben Azur and Achav ben Kolaya and the rest of those famous Nevi'ei Sheker. You can actually go to someone who's been proven, who proved himself in front of the Sanhedrin already, then you could do it. Oh, okay. Your permission? We go even further? Oh man. Sure. Okay, so I'm going to record something, and I'm going to send it to you guys as a Zoom link. As a YouTube link. God willing, in the next 2 days. Okay. Until then, it's been fun. So be safe. May God protect us from further wars here on out. And if we have to have war, see the defeat and utter destruction of all of our enemies. B'mehera v'yameinu.
Man, thank you very much, Avi. Be well.